Hi, welcome to this brief video tutorial on configuring Mumble shortcuts for optimal use with Linux Air Combat. Linux Air Combat has its keyboard set up with a group of special keys that are designed to be used with Mumble. 10 of them, these 10, are used for jumping among channels, and 6 others are used for push-to-talk or volume and muting functions. It's not necessary that you do these things. You can configure your Mumble any way you want, and there are various ways to control it. But if you match this setup, you will match the expectations of Linux Air Combat. And if you do that, then when you press the 1 key, Mumble will immediately jump to Mission 1 Channel All, and it will tell everybody else in your mission that is flying within reasonable radio range that you have done that. Likewise, if you press 2, it jumps to the blue subchannel of Mission 1. If you press 3, it jumps to the red subchannel of Mission 1. Likewise, these 3 keys, 4, 5, and 6, work for Mission 2, all, or blue subchannel, or red subchannel. And these 3 keys, 7, 8, and 9, work for Mission 3, to talk to everybody, or just the blue team, or just the red team. It's really handy to do that, to use these. You can quickly jump around in the channels, and each time you do, other people playing in your same mission are told that you've entered the mission or entered the red team or the blue team of the associated mission. Likewise, when you talk with push-to-talk, or when you mute yourself, other players on the same flying in the same mission are told what you're doing. So it's a good idea to set this stuff up. However, configuring Mumble to do all this will require that you create, I think it's 16 shortcut keys. I'm going to go through that with Mumble to show you how to do that. Mumble's already running on this computer, and if I click on this little pair of talking lips, you can see my Mumble configuration right here. And I'm already connected to our Mumble server at bosonet.no-ip.biz. That's the Mumble server we use right now. Now in the future I think that will change. That's just the server we're using during this development phase and during our beta testing. But that server has an arrangement of channels that's optimal for use with Linux Air Combat. For example, it's got a group of channels for Linux Air Combat and the various realms. We're only using Realm 0 right now, so all of the configuration will assume Realm 0. It's got 3 channels for Mission 1, and 3 for Mission 2, and 3 for Mission 3, and each has associated help, so that if you linger on one of those, you get a pop-up with information describing how that channel is used. We'll be assuming that as you watch this movie in the future, you will also be connecting with our main Mumble server, and it will have a very similar channel arrangement and use these same macros and same names. As I think about it, there are a couple of other things we ought to discuss before we get too deep into configuring Mumble's shortcuts. First of all, I want you to understand a principle. Linux Air Combat and Mumble work so nicely together that you might be deceived into thinking that the coupling between the two programs is deeper than it really is. These two programs are very lightly coupled together. There's loose coupling through the keyboard. The only basis for interfacing Mumble and Linux Air Combat is through the keyboard. Linux Air Combat knows when you press these keys. It assumes Mumble will take the corresponding steps, and it informs your own cockpit panel about that assumption when you press a key, and it also informs other people in your mission. If they're in the same mission as you, in the same realm as you, and flying within reasonable radio range, when you press one of these keys, they are told that you've pressed that key. The meaning of the key is assumed to match the standard setup. So if you press push-to-talk 1, your own Mumble panel will say transmitting, and others in your mission will get a message that you're sending a narrowcast down here in their system panels while you're holding it down. If you press push-to-talk 2 here, your own Mumble panel will say broadcasting or transmitting, and the other players will be told that you're doing a broadcast on that channel. If you press the 1 key, your own Mumble panel will say that you've switched to the Mission 1 channel all, and other players in the mission will be told down here that you switch to Mission 1 channel to the Mission 1 channel all, or to the current mission if they're in Mission 1 channel all. Similarly, if you switch to the blue channel or the red channel, your Mumble panel will tell you that, and other players will be told that. Whether or not that actually happens depends on whether you've got Mumble active and whether you've programmed Mumble to set these keys up with appropriate shortcuts. If you set the shortcuts up differently, the messages will just confuse everybody. So don't make the mistake of believing that the coupling between Mumble and Linux Air Combat is magical or deep. It's not. It's shallow. It just depends on the way you set up these keys. If you set up these keys to match our expectations, then Linux Air Combat will correctly inform other players in your missions and your own Mumble panel about what you're doing. If you set them up differently or don't set them up at all, the messages will still come, but Mumble won't respond as we would expect. And that's up to you. It's perfectly fine to run Mumble a different way. For example, although we assume you're using push-to-talk keys to activate your voice, Mumble has very fine voice activation where you don't have to press any buttons at all. If you are operating in a sufficiently quiet environment, and if your microphone is well behaved, and if you got it positioned close to your lips, you can activate Mumble voice just by talking. If you do that, Linux Air Combat has no way of knowing you are doing it, and so it won't turn on your transmitting button, and other players won't say receiving when your transmission comes in, and they won't be told that you're transmitting. That's perfectly fine. They'll hear your voice, and as long as you're clear in context, they can sort all that out. You've got some decisions to make then. If you want to match this setup, it really works sweetly, and everybody is told what you're doing, but you don't have to. Well, that's enough about that. Let's proceed now with the configuration. Okay, let's configure some Mumble shortcuts. We'll do that from the Mumble client by clicking on Configure, Settings, Shortcuts. Here is what it looks like when you start out in the beginning when you have no shortcuts. First, I'm going to set up my push-to-talk keys. I'm going to click Add to add a shortcut. It pops up with the unassigned notation. I click that, left click on unassigned, click. A drop-down arrow drops down to ask me what kind of shortcut I want to create. I'm going to select Push-to-Talk. Whereupon, I'm able to click under here, and it says Press Shortcut. I'm pressing F1, which assigns function key 1 to Mumble's Push-to-Talk function. I click Apply, and that's done. Now I'll add another one. I'm going to use the, as you can see here, we use function key 1 for push-to-talk 1, and function key 2 we use for what we call push-to-talk 2, which Mumble calls a broadcast. That is, Mumble has two different kinds of transmissions. We call them a narrowcast and a broadcast. A narrowcast goes only to your selected channel, whereas a broadcast Mumble calls shouting, or whispering or shouting, to a channel and all of its subchannels. I call that a broadcast inside Linux Air Combat. We're going to assign F2 to that by clicking Add, clicking on Unassigned to change it to Whisper Shout, and we're going to say that we want that to be shout to channel. We're going to shout to the current channel with all subchannels. When you shout to the current channel and all subchannels, I call that a broadcast, and I assign that to function key 2. I'm hitting F2 right now. We can apply. So now we've created two shortcuts. Function key 1 will narrowcast to the current channel only, and function key 2 will broadcast to the current channel with all of its subchannels, and that matches these two Linux Air Combat keyboard mappings. Next, I want to do volume up and volume down. Let's start with volume up, which is F3. So I'm going to add another shortcut by clicking Add. Clicking on Unassigned brings the selection arrow down. We're going to scroll down to volume up, which I'm going to assign to by pressing F3. Clicking Apply. So now we've done these three, F1, F2, F3. Let's assign F4 to volume down. Going back to the Mumble configurator, I'm going to add another command. Clicking on the unassigned notation gives me a chance to select volume down. And then clicking on the shortcut notation here, I'm clicking F3 right there and clicking Apply. So now we've got function keys F1, F2, oops, this should have been F4. Clicking here, I'll repent of that by clicking F4. Okay, we got function keys F1, F2, F3, and F4. Clicking Apply here, we can refer back to our map. We see we've got these four guys done. Let's also assign F5 to mute microphone. Back over here, I'm going to add another one. Clicking on unassigned, and then the drop down arrow allows me to join down to mute self. Click, turns that into a mute self, and that is going to be F5. Clicking Apply, and going back to our picture again. Next I want to do mute speaker, F6. To do that, I'm going to add yet another shortcut by clicking Add. Then I click on Unassigned and scroll down to, they call it deafen self. I mean, turning off your speaker, they call that deafening yourself. And the shortcut for that is going to be F6, so I click on F6 right now. Clicking Apply. So that is how I mapped function key F1, F2, F3, F4, F5, and F6 to correspond with the expectations of Linux Air Combat. Now, if I click OK, here's Mumble. Every time I press F1, I'm transmitting, and I can see down here the little Mumble mouth turns red while I'm holding down F1, and incidentally I can hear other machines in my lab here listening to my voice. Similarly, if I press F2, which should be the narrowcast, this little mouth should turn blue. I'm pressing it right now. Press. There it is, turning blue. Let's see what else. If I press mute microphone F5, you toggled your sound status. Mumble informs me that I've turned off my microphone, and you can see that little X there indicating that I'm not speaking. If I untoggle that by pressing F5 again, you toggled your sound status. Incidentally, those audio alerts are another customization I've done with Mumble, which I'll teach you about in a different video series. Okay, let's continue configuring. I'll add some more shortcuts. Click on Configure, then Settings, clicking on Shortcuts. Here's the list of shortcuts we've made. I now want to make some more. Let's start with this shortcut right here, the 1 key, which I call the Channel 1 All. When I press that, I want my Mumble client to jump to Mission 1's main channel so I can talk to everybody in the mission. That's why we call it Channel 1 All. So let's configure that right now by going back to the configurator. I'm going to click Add, and this is a 2-step process. It requires 2 separate steps to do this. First, I'm going to click on Add, then I'm clicking on Unassigned, clicking here, and the first part of this is to set up a whisper or shout function. Click. Then within the whisper or shout, you click here under Data, and these 3 dots, which goes to the website to find the names. Well, first it asks, do you want to whisper to a list of users, or do you want to shout to a channel? I want to shout to one of the channels. Clicking on it. Now, this box allows me to look at the channels available. I like to make this box a lot bigger. And I want to click on this arrow right here. I don't want to go to the root channel. I want to go into Linux Air Combat. all of our work for this example is always going to be within realm 0 because that's the only realm we're using right now. So I'm clicking on realm 0 to expand it out, and this is the channel I want to associate with that 1 key. So I left click on that and click OK. So now, and it's a good idea to expand this out too so we can see it. Now I have a whisper or shout function that will take me to Mission Network Battle 01, but I haven't assigned it a key yet. I'm going to now click on, in this field, click, and press the 1 key and apply. Going back to our picture here, that has halfway finished the macro for this key. To finish the other half, I have to add another key. I'm clicking Add, and then clicking on Unassigned, and from the drop-down list this time, I go to Join Channel, and this Join Channel has to be completed by, again, in the shortcut field, pressing the 1 key. Now I'm clicking Apply, and now I've taken 2 steps to program this 1 key for Mission 1 All. The first step was to create a shortcut to go to Mission Network Battle 01, associating it with key 1. The second step was to activate a join channel, associating it with key 1. I'm going to click Apply and OK, closing down this dialog, which means that whenever I press this key, Mumble should jump to this channel. Let's try it. I'm right now pressing this key, whereupon you can see that my name Bob jumped to Mission Network Battle 01. I can go back to the root with my mouse by double clicking on the root, and now you see Bob is here. Let's run through that exercise again. I'm now in the root channel. My name is Bob. I'm going to press this key right now, and when I do, press, you can see Bob jumped immediately to Mission Network Battle 1, exactly as we expected here, Channel 1 All. Let's go back to the root channel. That is how you create a hotkey shortcut to jump to channels. Just to help you understand this again, we'll run through another example. I want a hotkey to jump back to the channel root. That's the 0 key. So to configure that, I'm going to continue as before by clicking on, in the Mumble client, Configure, Settings, Shortcuts. I'm going to add another shortcut, clicking on the unassigned notation to choose what kind of shortcut this is, activating the drop-down list all the way to the bottom. This is another whisper shout function. And now within its data field, right here, which is now empty, I click on empty, click, and then these three dots show up, prompting me to decide what to do with this. I'm clicking on that right now, click, which opens up this big box. Within that box, it wants to know what kind of shortcut do you want to do. This is going to be a shout to channel shortcut, just like the other one. Click, whereupon it opens a diagram of my website and the available pages, or available channels. Let's make this bigger. This time I want to go to the root channel. So I'm click and OK. That means we now have a function for whisper shout to the root channel, but it doesn't have a shortcut yet. To get that, I'm clicking here, click, and now I'm pressing the 0 key, 0. I did that because I want to use the 0 key to get to the root channel. I'm going to click Apply, and that's halfway done. There always are 2 steps to these channel switching hotkeys. We took 2 steps to do this one. We've done one of the 2 steps for this one. For the other half, I want to add another shortcut, Add, let's click. I click on Unassigned, click, and we're going to go down to the drop-down list and click Join Channel. And to complete this off, under the shortcut field, I left-click and then type 0, because it's the 0 key we are worried about. When I click Apply and OK, now I should be able to jump to the Linux Air Combat Mission Network Battle 01 by pressing the 1 key, and then when I press 0, I should be back at root. Let's try it. I'm pressing 1 right now, which takes me exactly where I wanted to be in Mission Network Battle 01, and if I press the 0 key right now, I'm back at the root channel. That is how we do that. By continuing that pattern, we can make shortcuts to go to the blue subchannel and the red subchannel of Mission 1, And similarly, we've got 3 keys we can set up for mission 2, and 3 keys we can set up for mission 3. When all of that is done, you'll instantly be able to jump to the main channel for mission 1, or the main channel for mission 2, or the main channel for mission 3, or the blue channel subteam, the blue team subchannel for any of those missions, or the red team subchannel for any of those missions, quickly hopping back and forth. And when you do, Mumble will respond exactly the way Linux Air Combat keyboard is expecting, and your own network router panel will tell you what you've done, and messages will tell your peers in the network what you have done, and their network router panels will also show receiving or transmitting accordingly. Wow, I realize that's a lot. Let's go back to the Mumble's configurator, look at those settings and the shortcuts. We have only done a few of them. I'm going to add the red team and blue team subchannels for mission 1, and then we'll call it good, letting you and you can continue this on your own following this pattern. So now that we have done this button, I want to now do this one. I'm going to use the 2 key to go to the blue team subchannel of mission 1. To do that, I'm going back to the Mumble configurator. As before, I'm clicking on Add, and in this unassigned notation, I left click on it, which takes me to the drop-down list. Now I want to scroll to the bottom of that list, because this time I'm going to create another whisper shout function. And there it is, but its data is empty, meaning it doesn't know much about how to handle itself yet. It needs further configuration. So I'm clicking here, click, whereupon I go to these 3 dots indicating more, and it opens up this little box here asking, well, what kind of whisper do you want to do? Do you want to do a whisper? No, I want to do a shout to channel. Click, whereupon it draws a diagram of my website, of our server channels. I want to drill in here. I don't want to go to root this time. I want to go into Linux Air Combat and beyond. I want to go into Realm 0 and beyond. I want to go into Mission Network Battle 1 and beyond. Click. For this one, I want to do the blue team. Click. When I now click OK, we now can see that this whisper shout is going to go to the Mission 1 blue team, and clicking here under shortcut and then pressing the 2 key on my keyboard, press, sets that up. I now click apply, and we are now halfway done with the programming of this 2 key. For the other half, I add another command. Click on add, then I click on unassigned and scroll down to join channel, click, and then in this shortcut field, which I activate with a click, I now press 2 and apply. Let's add one more, because now we finished with the 1 key, we finished with the 2 key. Now I want to add the 2 shortcuts to activate the 3 key. So we got 2 more to go. I'm going to add another shortcut. As before, we click on unassigned from the drop down list. We go to the bottom. This is another whisper shout command. Click. Whereupon now we look at seeing that the data is empty associated with that command. I click on the data field, and then on the resulting 3 dots, which asks, do you want this to be a whisper command or a shout command? Well, once again, all these are shout to channel. Click. Whereupon I get a diagram of the available channels on our server. I'm making this bigger. This time we want to drill into beyond root, into Linux Air Combat, always in Realm 0. We're still in Mission 1. This time we're setting up the red team. Click. And OK. And that's halfway done now with that 3. Excuse me, we now need to associate that with the 3 key. So clicking here, it says press shortcut. I'm pressing 3 right now. And apply. And now we're halfway done with the 3 key. For the other half, we have to add one more shortcut. Clicking on add, click. Clicking on unassigned, click. From the drop-down list, click. We're going to go to join channel, click. And then with the data blank, I can't use it yet. I need to assign a shortcut to this join channel, click. And I'm going to press the 3 key on my keyboard. Press. And now clicking apply, click, and OK, click. I now have shortcuts to go to. I'm going to press the 1 key, which takes me to Mission Network Battle 1. I'm now going to press the 2 key, which should take me to the blue team. It did. Now I'm going to press the 3 key, which should take me to the red team. You can see me, I'm here on the red team. Now I'm going to press the 0 key, which should take me back to root. And it did. So now I've set up all my push-to-talk keys, my volume, louder or softer keys, my mute keys, and I've now got powerful shortcuts to go to any of the 3 channels associated with Mission 1. That is how we do that, and if you follow that same pattern for Mission 2, programming these 3 keys with 6 new shortcuts, and for Mission 3, programming these 3 keys with 6 new shortcuts, you will be set up for optimal use of Linux Air Combat with Mumble, and when you press any of these shortcut keys, everything will work as it should, and your peers on the network will know what you are doing. Thanks. That is how we do that. This then is what my shortcuts list looks like after I'm all done. I've created enough whisper shout shortcuts to take me to any of the defined keyboard keys, and each is associated with a join channel shortcut. That completely maps this keyboard and its Mumble-oriented hotkeys to work well with Linux Air Combat, displaying the results of those hotkeys on my own Mumble panel and transmitting the results to peers so that Mumble will behave as we expect it to. That is all. I hope you enjoy this, and I hope that you get your Mumble working cooperatively with Linux Air Combat as we've described here. Thank you. Linux Air Combat is a product of AskMrWizard.com, and we're very glad that you're interested in it. You can always learn about Linux Air Combat by going to AskMrWizard.com and clicking on the Gaming and then Flight Simulation links, and that will take you to our Flight Simulation section, and prominent in that section you'll see a link to Linux Air Combat. This is the main page you want.